Hello and welcome, everybody. This is the fifth installment of our Psychology of Lockdown series. I am joined today by George Roche once again. He is the executive director of The Line Canada or The Line International. You can find them at thelineinternational.com. They're doing a lot of anti-lockdown protest work, as you all know if you're following the series up in Canada. But George has a history and an education in psychology, and we've had these interesting conversations about this psychology of lockdown. So we're starting to get into the meat of this series. We've started with mystification. We're going through the characteristics of the mystified personality to really get to the heart of why people are not just, I don't want to say falling for the lockdown rhetoric. That's what I personally believe, but why are people so quick to jump onto what the authority figures are saying without question? And then why are the rest of us that do question the authority figure, why are we being shamed? Why are we being sidelined? And at this point, why are we being so almost completely censored across the board? So today, we're going to continue the series on with the idea of living in a trance-like existence. And George, why don't you just take it away? Let us know what that means. What does it mean to live a trance-like existence?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. So many people have this experience with their friends and coworkers and family members where there's this ensuing disagreement about the current state of affairs. Usually the minority in the family, one or two people perhaps, might agree on what so many of us have seen as being, the coup d'etat of the United States parading around as a COVID scam. And some people are still on planet COVID. So now we got families on, inhabiting two different planets. We got the people who understand the Great Reset is upon us and that they're trying to usher that in by the creation of a lot of fear and anxiety to keep us preoccupied with such fear and anxiety and begging our officials to take care of us, to parent us, to meet our needs and get rid of this fear. And some of us think that's the vaccine that's going to do that. And some of the other people think that we need to hold accountable those that are at the helm, the oligarchy of the world. So naturally, it's become a situation now where these divisions aren't really defined by the circumstances. They are defined by what somebody thinks of you for what you believe. That's what it is. It's like, oh, you don't believe in wearing a mask? Well, there's a problem with you. You need help. You see, they start to pathologize you. They start to discredit you and attack you. So what are we seeing? We're seeing this person who thinks they're awake making decisions.
Let me just, can I jump in there for a quick second? Because, I've seen these articles coming out in mainstream news. At least a few months ago, they were really kind of promoting this idea that people who were anti-maskers are narcissists, right? I mean, you want to talk about pathologizing. It's really true. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen political leaders in my community posting these. If you don't wear a mask, it's because you lack empathy for everybody else, and you must be a completely unemotional person, and you're a narcissist. And it's this kind of I'm just bringing this up, and I want to emphasize because this is really scary for me right now. In the United States, we're seeing calls to deprogram Trump supporters. I mean, re-education camps. People are talking about this. And so the pathologizing isn't just about, shaming you or making you feel bad for your point of view, but it can actually, it's leading to full on, political concentration camps and re-education camps, and people are openly discussing this now. So it's getting nuts. It's getting nuts.
Well, it has gotten crazier over the past few days, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So absolutely. Many people are in a trance. Fear is trance inducing. You are so over focused on stimuli that is irrelevant to the exclusion of what is relevant. It's like any little morsel of feelings of safety are welcomed as if they were the largest gift you've received in months. This is totally embellished and unhealthy to believe in this kind of, the fantasy of a rescuer is born. Someone's going to save me. I don't have to do anything. They expect to be taken care of without any effort on their own parts. You see, they won't lift a finger. They won't get off the couch. They won't get involved. They're not proactive. They're not pro-social. They're all about self-protection. So when, in contrast to a person who is more conscious, naturally the person who's more conscious is more willing to take the actions. The person who wants to remain in self-protection mode will not.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only be in the intent to learn or the intent to protect.
It's funny. Let's just get into this definition of what it is to be in a trance. And what's coming to my mind, of course, is all the zombie movies that we see, right? Where it's like some event happens, a fear-based event, and everybody gets triggered into a trance-like state. And we have this metaphor of the zombie. It almost feels like that sometimes for me, I'll tell you that.
Well, okay, so this is very interesting, the trance-like state, okay, which shows up in socialization, the way you're spoken to, the way you're treated, how somebody interacts with you, et cetera, et cetera. Now, so what are we dealing with? Right now, we have this issue with masks all over the place. There's been no RCTs on masks, by the way, no random controlled trials, nothing to prove that masks and the efficacy thereof are to be relied upon.
I do actually think there was one Dutch study, just to let you know, and there were 6,000 participants. It was a randomized controlled study, no significant difference in COVID transmission between the two. So between the masked and the unmasked. So the science that is out there says the masks don't do anything.
Right. Well, Denny Rancourt got into it from the OCLA with this professor who just went bonkers because, he couldn't get around Denny. Denny had the facts. This guy wasn't interested. He was over analyzing things. And but anyways, I forgot where I was, but anyways, what you're dealing with is when you have a person who is in a trance, that is the mask beneath the mask.
Right. Right.
Now, so it's like tax on the mask. We are going to wear these things over our expressors. And now we have these people who are wearing a mask of self-sufficiency and okayness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay today. I'm really not, but I'm going to pretend I am, because I don't want to show anybody how helpless and needy I am, how afraid I am, how insatiable I am.
So this makes
we have this mask. Huh?
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's, you're covering up your authenticity because you have this wounded inner child that needs to be healed, and you're wearing a figurative mask. This is the trance-like state where you're pretending like everything's fine. And if I just do what I'm told, then everything's going to be fine. And as you said, the savior will come and save me if I just do my job and do what I'm told. And
unrealistic expectations, shamelessness, shameless. See, when parents don't demonstrate their emotions for their children get the message, emotions aren't okay.
Right.
So now when they're in pain or hurting, they act like they're fine because only those emotions were accepted and tolerated and affirmed. The other ones, to be afraid, concerned, ask questions, no, we don't do that here.
Right.
No talk, no listen rules, forget it, gone. Don't ask. So when you're raised that way, you were taught to deny some of these fundamental information givers. Emotions give us information about what we need to do for ourselves, like the oil gauge on a car tells us of a satiation or a need. So what happens when all of that gets neglected? Now, again, this insatiable child who becomes a conformist or a rebel. They go one way or the other, these trance-like people.
Right.
They either go for conformity, guilt-driven, or they become a rebel, fighting every authority figure on the planet. Okay, it's all or nothing. There's no balance to their discipline. In fact, they're undisciplined. They don't have boundaries. Remember, we talked about where does this come from? It comes from an abusive, neglectful environment where your needs for structure and proper development are not healthily met with deliberate attentionality from parents.
Right.
So I mean, think about magical, yearning for fulfillment, shame-based kind of person who's got a trance look on their faces, which ultimately confuses people because it's like when they would expect a different emotional reaction to something, they get the same face universally, almost across the board.
Right.
You would need explosions to get an emotional reaction out of these people. in
Right.
some cases.
Well, it totally makes sense. I mean, your parents are raised. I mean, we've been living in this culture, this authoritarian culture, I would say. I call it the patriarchal culture for so long. And people just haven't been taught how to have a healthy emotional response or listen to their emotions. Our emotional systems have been shut down. So you're raised by parents that haven't gone through the healing process, and they're modeling to you this behavior. Hey, when things are weird, just pretend like they're not, pretend like everything's fine. And that's how we make it through life. And that's the
Impression management.
Mm-hmm.
People are trained in impression management, not authenticity.
Right. Right.
Don't
Cool. Yeah.
keep it real here. You'll expose the flaws of the family. We have to pretend that we're upper class, we got it going on, but we're ravished with shame.
Mm-hmm.
And so these cover-ups are very trance-inducing because children get to learn that, okay, this is okay to talk about, but that isn't. So now they got the task of figuring out what is okay and what is not okay.
Right.
And sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't.
And it's just not okay right now to talk about taking your mask off or to talk about the fact that the lockdowns aren't working,
Well, yeah. And yet we got to get that shirt back on the press. The mask must be smashed. Both of them.
Both of them. Right on.
Both of them.
Yeah.
The pretentious person that you were walking around as in compliance, or a rebel, and you're still doing it in the name of shamelessness, covering up your weaknesses, your indifferences, or your vulnerabilities. Whatever it is you choose to hide owns you anyways. And whatever buys your silence over it definitely owns you. So you become the very prisoner you thought your defenses would release you from becoming. Wow, what a self-fulfilling prophecy, huh?
Right.
So
cycle of violence.
Absolutely. Yeah. On the self. This is a person hijacking themselves. This is not a person behaving in the best interest of themselves. This is a person who's copying the socialization and the dynamics of such socialization from earlier on. It's as if to say, okay, I've recorded everything you guys have taught me up till 15. I got it now. I'll take over. Mm-hmm. And I'll do to myself what you've done to me. I'll treat myself and others exactly how you've treated me. It's all I know.
Right.
Can't take somebody where you haven't been. Can't give what you haven't got. So I'm only going to go the distance my parents helped me to get. If I am aware, awake, and fortunate enough to realize that part of my journey is to grow myself up, to work on myself, become the best version of myself that I can be. And if I knew that from go, I would have made that my priority, knowing that it made all the difference in my ability to raise a family, become an artist, become a business person, become what do you call that? A tutor of other people, where we get to collaborate and everybody gets to learn something from other people in group settings. All of that, in my opinion, is enormously important sustenance for solid self-esteem to emerge, because it gives a person permission to be fully human. Whereas Trancelike people are either more than human or they're less than human. They're unoriginal, they're opinionated, and they scan the faces of other people before they present their own opinions for fear of looking a little off kilter to the group of people listening to them.
Right.
They're more apt to follow and behave with blind obedience.
Yeah. I love this metaphor of wearing a mask, the mask beneath the mask, because it just makes so much sense. I think a lot of people have this. I mean, a lot of people have this coping mechanism, right? You enter in with a group of people, you're unsure of yourself, but you want to present yourself with confidence, and you kind of read the crowd, right? And then want to present yourself in a way that's going to make you popular or fit in.
Exactly.
Rather than being confident in yourself and your feelings and being grounded and just presenting yourself as you are, and having the boundaries to say, if this group doesn't like me, then screw them. I'll find another group of friends, that appreciate.
Well, this is where you beg the question: do you want to find a group that will allow you to be who you are, or a group that will only allow you to belong to it if you become who you are not? So, I mean, to me, it's a very clear definition. However, people do flock to those, not so healthy groups of people We have people questioning their relationships right now. If that's not demystifying, I don't know what is, because they're, 15, 20 years I've known this person, and suddenly what they're saying to me about the virus here doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
They're believing that which is not true. They're using this as the measuring rod to bring into focus the quality of that relationship now. It's that evident to people that this is a measuring rod.
Absolutely. And we're seeing it all over the place. People unfriending friends that they've known for much of their life right now because this issue comes up. And another thing I want to reiterate, because I think everybody listening probably knows that George and I do question the COVID narrative and are principally anti-lockdown, but that's not really the focus of this series. The focus of this series is that why aren't we having rational, critical discussions, and why can't, even if you're a minority, why can't you feel comfortable discussing your perspective really in any given situation? I mean, we're kind of taking a big view here, but it's more about just having real adult conversations and having disagreements that are in a healthy way, as opposed to all of this pathology that we're seeing that is the psychology of lockdown that seems to underline so much of the conversation that we're having. I mean, we're clearly not having a healthy conversation, whether you're pro-lockdown or anti-lockdown, right? I mean, it's just crazy to me. It's crazy that we live in a culture where it's like people just don't know how to communicate anymore, and they don't have respect for each other's when they do have a difference of opinion. And so we're exploring why that is. And this Trancelike mask beneath the mask, I think, really hits the nail on the head. I think it's really pervasive. And people just then get very confused when they want to pretend like everything's normal. The authority figure tells me what to do. I'm just going to do that. And somebody disagrees. And all of a sudden it hits them in the core. They're triggered into all of this. The wounded inner child that hasn't been allowed to express themselves, and they don't want to face that. It's preventing communication.
Well, you see, getting back to the conformist approach to all this, the conformist follows other suggestions or rules as if they were orders to be obeyed. We are seeing significant amounts of people doing that. The government said it, you better do it. Just wear your mask. They said it. Be a conformist. You see, no questions are asked. So when they hear something in mainstream media, they believe that that is the correct way to operate. That's what they said. Everything else is a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Very irresponsible behavior to do that, to not consider both sides of the coin. And I don't care how flat you make the pancake, it still has two sides, and both need to be accounted for. No matter how thin you make it, the differences you make, you've got to look at the both sides. So this is precisely what conformists and rebels won't do. Remember, they are compulsively counter-dependent. No matter what you tell them, no matter what you say to them that makes more sense than what they've been believing, you are a POS.
Right.
For not buying into the narrative. And you are hurting people. You are putting lives in danger. Right. These people will tell you.
You're peeling off the mask, and that's got to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so again, now this is where words, no matter how skilled, don't take root. People, they don't take root. These people repeat the same pattern daily.
Right.
It would not matter the depth of sensibility in anything that you tell them that may challenge such trance-like state.
It's an addiction.
They're not interested in new information. They're not interested in new information.
Right.
They're interested in attacking your point of view. That's what they're interested in.
Yeah, shaming you into shutting up so they can avoid even having the conversation.
What we call more than human behavior: judgmental, shaming, controlling, discounting. That's all more than human behavior. Nobody has the wherewithal, the ability. Nobody was invested the power to do that to another person. You don't have that right. Start bullying, intimidating, and using authoritarian styles of relating as if you're going to beat it into them to the point that they'll just go, okay, never mind. I'm not going to believe what I really want to believe anymore because of you, because you bullied me into believing otherwise.
Right.
And this is the basis for a lot of spousal abuse today. Name calling, and you're a blah 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 and blah blah blah.
Sure.
Okay, hang on a sec here. We're dumping now. We're dumping. We're bringing the relationship into question. You don't believe what I believe because I think what I believe is much smarter than what you believe. And then, wife or husband, depending which one's on planet COVID, one's on planet reset. That gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
There's no compromising going on there.
Well, it is amazing. And I think even in my own personal experience, when you approach someone who's wearing this mask, this trance-like mask, and you try to knock on that door using critical thinking, saying, hey, maybe I'm not right, but this is the information that I have, and I'd like to have a discussion with you, that'll be perceived as an attack. Right?
Exactly, because they fear being wrong.
You're just trying to have a conversation. You're not trying to impose your logic on someone else. You're not being confrontational, but they will perceive it as a personal attack. And then they get triggered into the fight or flight mode. They want to protect that mask. And then all of their coping mechanisms come up, including shaming and judgmentalism and all of these other characteristics we've discussed.
Well, they're not listening. They're
Right.
not amenable to reasoned argument. If they're not amenable to a reasoned argument based on new information, they're not evolving with things. If this is that important to them, then they need to make less important the attack on you or anyone else. But it seems that their first choice is to attack. Now that's ingrained because usually the first response a person delivers is the one they know the most about. It's common. It's within them. It's ingrained in them.
Right.
And since it's learned behavior, please explain to us where that behavior came from. Where did you learn to belittle, attack, insult, or otherwise attempt to shame and humiliate another person for simply disagreeing with your notions, your beliefs, your ideas about matters, the lockdown, COVID, etc.? Who invested the power in you to dominate my point of view? If you're not interested in learning new information and not bringing me into the problem matrix, I'm not your problem. We need every single person involved sensibly in this. Everybody. That's what unification is. But if everybody is playing with different information, unification is hardly possible, especially when such information explains what is really going on, and the people within that matrix aren't interested to know that. Now you have the basis for division.
Oh, I mean, what you just said, especially considering what's going on in the United States right now. I mean, the idea of unifying is almost impossible to even think about. And the divisions are so incredibly great. And I would posit that
deliberately.
Well, I mean, what's happening, right, is authoritarians who seek to control our entire communities, our entire populations, are taking advantage of these ingrained coping mechanisms.
Okay, so
in order to take control. And people, instead of pointing the finger at these guys and saying, hey, we're going to have a rational conversation amongst my friend group or my community, and we're going to tell this authoritarian control freak to go screw themselves, they're squabbling amongst themselves because they're all triggered into all emotional damage into their wounded inner child.
Let's put that in the context of the lockdowns and what people are going through when they go to the grocery store. Husband and wife or friends walk into the store and the person says, where's your mask? And the one person goes, well, I'm exempt, I don't wear a mask. And the other one is probably more compliant. They'll put the mask on. Okay. Despite believing otherwise, they'll put the mask on just to be compliant. Don't want to make any waves.
Right.
Today. We don't want to tell people. See, everyone that does that is a check mark for the Great Reset, in my opinion, because they're using that mask as a conformity tool.
Sure.
which gives them the inventory to determine how many people are in compliance with their plan. How well is their plan working? Remember, a goal without a plan is just a dream. Well, this is not a dream anymore.
Right.
There's a plan. There's a goal.
It
You
is.
know what they are.
Right. It is amazing. I mean, they can literally use the mask wearing as a gauge as to how effective they're implementing this new economic system, this more high-tech economic system that they're calling the Great Reset. They can actually now just look at the population. How many are wearing their masks? Okay, we got them. You know? We
Yeah,
know
I know.
people are good to go as we make the transition to the Great Reset and
It's
to
the nod. It's
roboticizing of everything,
yeah.
and the complete switch of the labor force, and a different form of human resource management. We're going to go ahead and do this, and we have this flag literally on people's faces that let them know just how effective their tactics are. It's crazy. And
Well, this is this has been an incredible overview. I'll tell you one of the final things I'll say
mhm.
is if we can get people to understand that conformity is not their only chance or their only choice, rather, that they do have the right to explore other areas of all of this and keep an open mind. Don't be so rigid with yourself.
Yeah.
Keep an open mind. Use wide ranges of dialogue. You don't know everything. That this is something that has been engineered by extremely intelligent, corrupt people
Very well funded. Yeah.
that got a lot of dough.
I know that we are knocking on 30 minutes, and we do need to wrap it up. We could talk about this for hours as always.
All day long.
Will
All
you
day long. I know
will
we
you
could.
spend just a few minutes here at the end talking about that concept of ingrainment? Because it's just seems like such a, I mean, we all are ingrained with something that we could probably change. And so how is it that we even can tap in, understand what's ingrained in us that is not healthy and is not serving us, and actually transmute that into something positive? I mean, what needs to
So
happen?
okay, so without, again, I try not to delve into the jargon because that loses people. Let's
Hmm.
keep this simple. Everybody has a computer, and every computer, up until now, has got a hard drive in it. That is your operating system. So, how did that get programmed? Well, somebody put data on it, and that became its operating system through codes and different styles of language communication and computer language technologies. So similarly, we got this 13 billion circuit computer brain that's like a sponge when it's brand new, and by the time we hit 2, right, we're slowly being conditioned into the family's belief systems. There's not one culture that doesn't have a preconceived notion about what a man or a woman should be when they are born. So if you're born into a headhunting culture, they teach you how to be a good headhunter. If you're
Right.
born into a pastoral culture, they teach you how to be a good pastor. But there isn't one culture that doesn't have a preconceived notion about what a man or a woman should be. So it's quite interesting that there are various ways to do this. However, the best way to experience ingrainment is your brain is a hard drive, and what you hear the most, you actually record the most. It's like these little pieces of data stick to your brain, and it gets stored in memory, the seat of memory being the amygdala. And anything that the amygdala sees that resembles the past guides the person's response. From the earliest of times, that remains in there like a record, just like the old vinyl records or whatever the recording is. The music doesn't get erased.
Mm-hmm.
It stays there. So by the time a person is 5 years old, everybody has roughly 25,000 hours worth of what's called parent tapes, or Johnson calls them automatic thoughts, that depending on the social situation, the relational situation, a person will develop these automatic thoughts, and in social settings, those thoughts will get triggered. And that becomes the ingrained speech. For instance, family words like all, every, never, always, you never, spitting out indictments to people. These are family words. They're all words of, absolutist thinking. All children are absolutizers.
Right.
They love to
Separating
use
us,
words like all, every, never.
right? And they separate us from our authentic self, our ability to make a different choice depending on the moment and the situation. We become less flexible.
Well, the power struggle is about the return to nirvana. There is no shortcuts to nirvana.
Right.
Let's get that clear.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get to the promised land, you got to go through Egypt.
Right.
Right? Okay. It's as simple as that. And there's no way around it. There's no shortcuts
process.
in nirvana.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do this work of demystification.
Yeah.
And if we're still stuck in the ingrainment of Trancelike states and belief systems and conduct and behaviors and rebel conformist roles that were assigned to us by the dysfunctional family system, if we don't pass them back, we will pass them on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to close it off for today. I love it, the idea of the trans-like state, and I think I'm going to remember the phrase "the mask behind the mask" for a long time, because that really kind of nails it. I'm going to have to throw that in the title.
Absolutely. It's the tax.
Yeah,
it's the mask tax.
For sure. Well, you want to let people know where they can find out more about the line then, and give us a little bit of info about what you're doing?
Yeah, well, at the Line Media on Twitter, at the Line Canada, also on Twitter. Get us on Facebook, The Line Canada. On the web, thelinecanada.com. And you can get me at media at thelineinternational.com. Anytime.
Sounds great, George. Thanks for coming on. I will just let people know that my name is Doug McKenty. I'm the host. I typically do a long-form interview podcast called The Shift with Doug McKenty. You can go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, maybe subscribe for the longer-form interviews at www.theshiftnow.com. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube at The Shift with Doug McKenty, and I'm also on Twitter at dmckenty. So, but if you want to find out the entire series, this Psychology of Lockdown series, and you're listening to this, I urge you to go to the website. It's under the free content tab, and you'll see the tab for Psychology of Lockdown there. This is number 5. We're going to have a total of 15, so stay tuned for all of them. And I'm looking forward to continuing down this journey with you, George. And I hope people really hear these words and understand that actually, we all have a long way to go. We all have this ingrainment. There's no shortcuts. But if we want to have a unified society filled with authentic adults, then this is this kind of psychological work we really need to dedicate to. So thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.